Hello learners, welcome back to Constant Learners. In this video, we will discuss the characteristics, advantages and disadvantages of DBMS. Now we've already decided that we're not going to memorize anything. So let's try and build the characteristics from whatever we've understood until now about database and database management system. Okay. Now if you haven't watched the first two videos in this series, then please do so because I've taken real life examples to explain the concepts of both data and DBMS. So I can assure you that your concepts will be very clear and you will be able to, understand other concepts, further concepts very easily. All right. Let's begin with the characteristics of database management system. So we know that data are raw facts, correct? And this data is stored inside the databases. Now, the data inside the database has to be related to one another, correct? And the data is stored inside the databases in the tables, that is in a tabular format, right? Now, in the previous video, we've already discussed how these tables are created and how the columns are declared, right? So, we know that each column is properly labeled inside the database. That means we have to give it a name. Let's say this is the name column, this is the gender column, then phone number, address, and let's say the course, correct? So, every column inside the table is properly named or properly labeled. Now we also specify the features of each column. For example, the name column will only take characters. The phone number column will only take integers, right? So we can specify the type of each column. Then we can also declare whether a particular column can be null or not null. That means if that column will accept empty cells or not. If it will not, then we cannot leave that column and empty. The entry inside that column cannot be empty, right? Now we can also specify the length of each column. Let's say the length of total characters inside the name column can be 20. That means maximum 20 characters will be accepted in the name column. Let's say for mobile number, the length specified is 9. That means only 9 numbers will be accepted in the phone column. Right. So this explains us that the data inside the database is very neatly stored and it is properly segregated. What is segregated? Segregated means separated. Like here you can see the name, gender, phone number, address, course, everything is very properly separated or segregated, right? So the first characteristic of DBMS is that the data is properly segregated and systematically arranged in a tabular format. So that is our first characteristic, right? The data is properly segregated and systematically arranged in the tabular format. Now this gives us our second characteristic, right? When the data is systematically stored and properly segregated and the tables are not accepting incomplete data. That means we've already seen that if we've declared that a particular column cannot be null, so it cannot accept incomplete data. That means unless you input some entry for that column, you cannot create that particular entry or store that data inside the database. It will not accept incomplete data, right? So DBMS ensures that the data stored in the database is accurate, consistent, and complete. Correct? This is complete understanding of DBMS and database, right? So this explains us that DBMS maintains data integrity. Okay, so DBMS maintains data integrity. So this is our second characteristic or the second feature of database management system, that DBMS provides mechanism to enforce data integrity. All right. Now next, let's say I have a folder in my computer wherein I store all the movies or series that I have downloaded, which I am intending to watch in the future. Okay. I'm not getting any time to watch any of those movies or series, but still I'm just downloading them and storing it in a particular folder. Now, say after 2 or 3 months, what will happen? I'll forget the names of the movies and the series that I've already downloaded. All right. And there's a possibility that I might re download those movies and series and again store it in the same folder. Now, will I get any notification that the folder already has the movie or the series that you are trying to store in it? No, it will not. That is, my folder is accepting duplicate data. Correct? However, this is not possible with a database. When we store the data inside a table of the database, and if the data is redundant or repetitive, then database will not accept that data entry. Okay, so this is our third characteristic, that is DBMS prevents data redundancy. All right, I hope that until now everything is clear. Now let's get to the fourth characteristic, right? So first 3 points, the first three characteristics have told us that in the database the data is properly segregated, it is neatly stored, it is systematically arranged, also the data is accurate, it is complete, that is data integrity is maintained. Then we also discussed that it prevents data redundancy. That means repetition of data is not allowed. That is, if you're trying to store duplicate data, it will not allow that, right? Also, incomplete data will not be accepted, as we discussed that if a column is declared to be not null, it will not accept the data without entering data inside that particular column, right? So this explains us that data inside the database or the tables inside the database cannot be inconsistent. So database management system prevents data inconsistency. All right. So database management system prevents inconsistency of data. That means the data stored inside the DBMS is very consistent. There's no incomplete, wrong, repetitive, inaccurate data inside the database. All right. So DBMS ensures data consistency in the database. Okay. Here we can say prevents. You can either write DBMS prevents data inconsistency, or you can write DBMS ensures data consistency. All right, let's head to the fifth characteristic of DBMS. Now, in the previous video, we've already discussed that DBMS builds the database and stores the data inside the database. But DBMS does not build the database inside itself. It is just a tool or an interface that helps us to build the database. But the database is built where? On the database server or on the cloud. It is not built locally inside DBMS. No, it is built on the database server or on the cloud, right? That means the data is not stored locally. Okay. However, it is stored in an external location. Now, how does it help us? It provides us with our next characteristic, that is data independence. That is, we do not need the data around us to access it, right? For example, if I have a hard drive and I have to access the data from that hard drive, I will need the hard drive with me. I will have to connect the hard drive with my laptop or my computer to be able to read or manipulate the data inside the hard drive. However, that is not the case with data inside the database. We can access the data from the database from any location. Okay. So we can say that DBMS allows data independence because the data can be read or manipulated by the user without affecting the application program or the databases, and without the data being locally stored around us. All right, so I can make a modification from India, and then tomorrow, if let's say I'm traveling to Dubai, then I can again modify the data from Dubai. I don't need to be present in a particular location to be able to access the data from the database. All right, I hope that this was clear. This again helps us to get to our next characteristic. Now, we've seen that the database is not locally present. The data is not present around us. It is present in an external location. Thus, this allows multiple users to access the data inside the database simultaneously. Okay, simultaneously means all at once. That means multiple people can access the data from the database simultaneously without affecting the data or the structure of the data. Okay, it does not really matter where the data is located. The data stays consistent with all the users. So if, let's say, this is the data inside the database, and I am accessing it, let's say, from India, you are accessing it from US, someone else is accessing it from Australia, and the other person is accessing it, let's say, from Korea. It does not matter. All of these people are going to see the same data, right? They are going to get the same data. I'm not talking about manipulating or changing the data. Right now, I'm only talking about reading the data from the database. So all of these users will be reading the same kind of data from the database. The data is going to be consistent irrespective of the user or the location of the user, right? So the next characteristic is that DBMS allows concurrent data access. That is, multiple users can access the data from the database simultaneously. All right. So DBMS allows concurrent data access by multiple users. All right. Then next. Now DBMS does not allow access to anyone and everyone. When you try to access any DBMS interface, first you will need to verify yourself. That is, you'll need to enter your details. You need an authentication ID, a password that you need to enter. Only then you will be able to access a particular database, right? So in a typical DBMS, we can create different user accounts with different access permission. Like, let's say user 1 can only read the data, user 2 can both read and write the data, but let's say he does not have the permission to give a delete command to the database, right? So then he will not be allowed to delete any data from the database. And then there's one person who has all the access. That is, he has the permission to do everything or anything with the database, right? So we can define the user permissions also, or let's say user access permission also, right? And this helps us or ensures data security, right? So DBMS provides various security mechanisms like authentication, then authorization, and encryption. Okay, And all of these helps us to protect our sensitive data from unauthorized access, because the data in the database is very important, right? We're storing important data that could help the businesses immensely. So we cannot allow anyone to access that data, and we cannot even take the risk of someone manipulating or deleting the data. Thus, we can say that DBMS provides security to our data. All right. I hope that all of this was clear. That was the end of all the characteristics. Now let's jump to the advantages of database management system. Now all the advantages that we are going to see, we are going to build it from characteristics only. Okay. So if you've understood the characteristics of DBMS, you can easily write the advantages of database management system. Now, in the first three characteristics, we saw that the data is properly segregated, systematically arranged. There's data accuracy is there, redundancy is prevented, inconsistency is prevented, data integrity is maintained, right? So the first point that we can add in the advantages of database management system is DBMS provides efficient data management by enabling users to store, retrieve, update and delete data efficiently. Okay, so first point can be efficient data management. Correct? Then second point will be, see, in the previous video we discussed that we need structured query language to write the commands for database management system to perform different tasks. And we also saw a very simple query and discussed that SQL is a very simple query language. Okay, so it eliminates the need for users to write complex algorithms to manage the data. So second point can be no need to write complex algorithms or programs. Correct? Then we discussed that the data is not locally stored, right? So it allows concurrent access from different locations. So that is also an advantage here, that DBMS allows concurrent access irrespective of user's location. So no matter where the user is located or how many users are trying to read the data from the database allows concurrent access from different locations simultaneously for multiple users. All right. Now, the next point is the data is stored on the cloud, right? So, we know that on cloud, we can store infinite amount of data, right? So, there's no limit to the quantity of data that can be accommodated in the databases. So, the next point is no limit to quantity of data stored. That is, we can store infinite amount of data in the databases, right? Then we discussed a point that data is accurate, it is complete, it is properly segregated, neatly arranged, and that gave us the characteristic that DBMS allows data consistency. So that can be another advantage of database management system, that is, it allows data consistency. So we can include all the points here, that database does not allow incomplete data, the data is neatly segregated, properly stored, and you can come to the point that it allows for data consistency, right? So that is our fifth advantage. Now, next point is that databases can be integrated with any other programming languages, right? DBMS allows us to integrate the database with the websites or apps written in any programming language, right? If let's say I have an app that is written in Python, okay? So I can easily integrate the database with the with my app, right? Or if I have a website wherein there's a registration form. Of course, when the data is entered in this registration form, it is going to get stored into the databases. So even if the website has been built in PHP, we can easily integrate the database with our website, right? So can be easily integrated with applications or websites written, or let's say built in other programming languages. Okay, then finally the last point that will also come from the characteristics, that is data security. This also we've already discussed in the characteristics, that is the DBMS provides us with immense data security and prevents unauthorized access. Okay, now let's also quickly discuss the disadvantages of database management system. The disadvantages are very little, but they are considerable. Okay, the first one is the data accommodated can be too huge, right? We know that the data is getting stored inside the cloud, so there's no limit to how much data is being stored. That we've already discussed here. There's no limit to the quantity of the data that has been stored. So the first disadvantage is, because there's no limit to the quantity of data that has been stored, there can be complexity in the entire database structure, right? The database structure can get extremely complex. Now there can be two types of DBMS. One is the open source DBMS, which is MySQL, and the other one is licensed DBMS, right? So the licensed database management systems can get very expensive. Okay, so that is another disadvantage of licensed database management system. I hope that all of these was clear. This was all for this video. I hope that you've understood it. I hope that I could make it easier for you to remember all of these points. In the next video, we're going to see the difference between file structure and the database management system. Please stay tuned, subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with as many people as you can. Thank you so much for watching.